Hey everyone, and welcome back to Satisfactory News. You may have noticed that this is not a Satisfactory video, and it's in fact a Shapez 2 video. This video is not sponsored, but I was given a key to try out this game's new 1.0 release early, and that 1.0 release is actually today. It's out now. I wanted to experiment with seeing if you guys like other factory game content on this channel, so if you feel one way or the other, I'd appreciate a comment saying so. So I'm a total noob at Shapez. I've never played it, and I've only ever seen a little bit of content about it. But I know that friend of the channel Total Eclipse is the game's community manager as of last year, so it seems only right to give it a try. This video is going to be my journey through the first hour or so of the game, going through their brand new tutorial, and I'll share with you some of the important tips and lessons I learned that will help you get started as well. But if you're a veteran player, I'd love to hear your advanced tips because I can see how this game can get really complex really fast. On my first day of work, my task was to complete the operator certification program. They don't just let anyone run the factories at Vortex Limited. I skipped the fine print and agreed to not build any spaghetti factories, a promise I would almost immediately break. I was presented with the basics right away. Here's the vortex where all your production output goes, and here are the mining nodes for our first shape. A gray circle. You know the basics of the average factory game. Place miners on nodes, build belts to transport items, stuff like that. I really like that the belts auto-connect to any inputs or outputs and that it's easy to make them uninterrupted by creating anchor points so you can make belts with multiple turns. Way better than having to make a bunch of individual straight lines. So I started off by launching these gray circles into the vortex and I figured that was a solid day's work. But my little helper robot had other plans, and he told me about the next piece of tech. In most factory games, this might be a smelter that turns ore into ingots or something like that. But instead it showed me a cutter, specifically a half destroyer, that deletes half of a shape. Then I was introduced to not a constructor or an assembler, but a rotator. It was immediately clear to me what this game was all about. It had more in common with Rush Hour than Satisfactory. Well, joke's on you Shapez, I love Rush Hour. I gotta say, my favorite part about this tutorial was just how foolproof it was, because I am a fool. There's a lot of information on the screen right now for having been in this game for all of 3 minutes, so I was honestly not even reading the on-screen text. But the giant purple arrows telling me where to go, as well as a clear queue of tasks, meant that I could figure out what the game wanted, either by reading or just by looking. I appreciate a well-designed tutorial that doesn't feel too locked down, and this one checked all the boxes for me. So I repeated a similar process with red squares and also unlocked my next new item, the stacker, which also unlocked an upper level for belts, suddenly turning this game a little more three-dimensional. And as far as I'm aware, there's more than one additional level, so this game can get pretty crazy. I would soon learn that the stacker was one of the most critical machines in this game. Most of the complex shapes ultimately come down to stacking them on top of each other, sometimes in a multi-stage process, as you'll see later. The first tip I want to present to you actually came to me from this in-game tip. It was a note about throughput, reminding me that stackers are slow. Turns out everything in this game has a consistent production rate, which makes sense. Each miner extracts 30 shapes per minute, each belt can move 120, and the stackers can each process 20 per minute. So you might expect my advice is to pay attention to throughput numbers, but it's actually to ignore efficiency, at least for now. If you're still learning the game like I was at this point, don't even bother. I found myself eventually getting pretty overwhelmed by all of the new items, shapes, chains of machines, and concepts that I needed to learn to accomplish my goals, and keeping exact numbers in mind would have made it so much worse. This game has no timers, and there's no punishment for letting things sit idle. Take this time to get used to the logic the game wants you to use rather than getting the numbers right. Save that for later when the game really ramps up and resources and space become more limited. Or don't, you can do whatever you want, but that's just kind of where my head was at. And I quickly ran into a situation where I can present my second tip, which is to delete old productions and keep things clean. Thanks to the top-down view and the intuitive controls, I found that it was so easy to remake production lines that tearing down something that was in my way that I no longer needed really helped clear my mind and let me focus on my current goal. So as I was working on this shape in the stacker, I stopped my initial processing of circles and stopped sending squares into the vortex, cleaning up the belts involved so I could focus on the task at hand. The next few stages in this tutorial were pretty similar to the steps that came before. I had to start mining blue diamonds and place them on top of red squares, then I had to start mining yellow stars. This reinforced the lessons I had just learned and I got to lay them out how I saw fit, not handheld too much by the tutorial. Though apparently I still needed that helping hand because I actually put red squares on top, which is the opposite of what was asked for. But deleting my mistake and fixing it was incredibly painless, and thanks to the progress UI on the side, it was immediately clear to me that my production was wrong because I didn't see the number going up. This next tip also came from a mistake, so let's see if you can spot it, because I bet you're smarter than I was in this situation. I had to cut the yellow stars in such a way that only one corner was delivered. So basically I had to cut it in half, then cut it in half again. I started with a row of half destroyers, which would leave the bottom half of the shape, followed by rotators, which would move that half to the left side. Then I made more half destroyers, leaving me with just one of the 4 corners. I then immediately placed 2 more rows of rotators, so that the shape would be in the top right, like it is in the picture. I am then presented with a tip titled, "Orientation doesn't matter." I've been rotating my camera second nature like this was a real-time strategy game this entire time. Why the heck did I think I needed to match the orientation? These shapes are all in circles. There is no such thing as orientation when it's on a circle. So in case you're dumb like me, let me tell you now, don't get stuck on orientation. Everything is a circle and you can just rotate your camera to make things match what you're trying to create. Please don't be like me. It was about this time I went looking through the keybinds to find out how to mass select and delete, as so far I'd been individually selecting things and pressing the delete key, but I figured there had to be a better way. Which is where I learned that you can hold shift and drag with the left mouse button to mass select, or hold shift and drag with the right mouse button to mass delete. I think these features are great, by the way, and they work perfectly in this kind of game. From there, it was more stacking, and I started working on both milestones and bonus jobs at the same time. My workload was starting to stack up, and the shapes required some more thinking and trial and error, which honestly was a lot of fun. I learned best by visuals and by examples, so I really appreciated that I could try something, fail quickly, and iterate on the process, all without losing much time or resources. There are no timers and no building materials here, and while that's not my preference for every game, I think it works really well here. It's nice not to be punished for learning, is what I'm trying to say. With my newfound delete tool and my available space dwindling, I present my next big tip: delete often. As in all factory games, you will continuously unlock new machines, and thus more efficient ways to accomplish your milestones. The factories you make will become obsolete, either due to an outdated method, or because you just don't need to produce a certain shape anymore. And like I said, rebuilding is pretty easy. All it costs is a bit of your time. And I bet on your second and third attempts at a production line, you can make it faster and more compact than before. I really appreciated that within 10 seconds I deleted this obsolete little production line and had a new one that I needed up and running in its place. Just like that. Another great tool in this game is copy and paste, as well as blueprinting. When you select an area, you can copy and paste it with Ctrl-C and Ctrl-V, meaning expanding factories is super easy. I'm generally against large-scale copy and paste in 3D games like Satisfactory, but for a top-down and mostly 2D game like Shapez, I think it makes total sense. Apparently there is a blueprints library, but I didn't interact with it in the tutorial, but that's awesome to see. I worked my way through increasingly complex shapes, making use of the cutter, which splits a shape into 2 halves. It took me a while to figure out how to make this shape of 2 opposite blue arrows, eventually settling on a cutter, rotators, half destroyers, and stackers, using every single one of the tools shown to me so far to make this. That was really satisfying to see it all come together. But then I was also left wondering if there were other ways to do this, and I think maybe that's one of the draws of this game, is that there's multiple ways to solve the puzzle. There's no one right answer every time. After that, I was able to select this comparatively complex line and paste it all across the belt in seconds. Really nice. Over the next few minutes, I filled up a pretty large portion of the available map, finishing all my milestones and jobs. I wasn't exactly being smart about it, and after half an hour of messing around, I'd officially broken my contract and created spaghetti belts. My factories were butting up against the vortex, and I had to send belts over and under each other just to accomplish what I needed. It was a mess. So when the game started introducing space platforms beyond my initial factory space, and I realized I didn't have an amazing place to bring this unexpected new shape in, I decided it was a great time to just delete everything. And oh my god, was it refreshing to use what I had learned for the last hour and recreate my factory with clean belts and plenty of space. I only had 1 item left on my quota, so I set it up with a series of stackers, and before I knew it, I had my operator license. And that's when I zoomed out, saw how massive this game world was, and decided the next steps were a job for another day. So for now, I'm clocking out. Shapez 2 1.0 has a lot to offer, including a new manufacture mode that promotes expansion over teardowns, full Steam mod support, and improvements to fun game mechanics like trains, wires, and color mixing. And of course, new achievements. This game clearly has endless hours of entertainment, and it's as big as you want it to be, with multiple difficulty levels and game modes. While this presents as a factory game, I'd almost consider this more of a puzzle game, and would recommend it to fans of both genres. Compared to Satisfactory, this game is much more about figuring out what sequence of items and machines you need in order to create what the game wants from you, rather than solving logistics. Perhaps best of all, I didn't encounter any bugs or major performance issues, and I found the controls to be pretty intuitive, so it really was a very pleasant play experience. I enjoyed Shapez 2, and I think you will as well. 1.0 is officially out today, so check it out. I'll have a Steam link in the description. Again, please let me know if you feel one way or the other about this non-Satisfactory content. Should I cover other factory games on occasion, or just stick to the channel's namesake? Either way, I hope I'll see you in the next video, and happy constructing.